Welcome to another episode of Progress, Potential, and Possibilities, discussions with fascinating people designing a better tomorrow for all of us. I'm your host, Ira Pastor.
Welcome everybody again to another episode of our show featuring not one but two fascinating guests today who are both helping to create a better tomorrow in a very unique area. And as subscribers to our show know, we spend a lot of time on the theme of healthy aging. And it is related to this theme that we're going to segue into an area that we have not yet touched on the show. But as a little background, longer term correctional facilities, of which here in the United States we have around 2,000, are currently not geared to accommodate the needs of the growing aging population. In this population, we see the natural slowdown of physical mobility, cognitive processes, and aging prisoners are prone to predation, humiliation, and major central nervous system degenerative disorders such as early onset dementia, including Alzheimer's disease. And it's very difficult to detect in this population, which is also accompanied by other degenerative diseases, but also mental illnesses, maladaptive social behaviors, and so forth. The Gold Coat program, which is based at California Men's Colony State Prison in San Luis Obispo, consists of a group of healthy inmates that are specifically trained to care for those with dementia and other cognitive impairments. And the experiences of these Gold Coat workers, which they're designated for because of the gold smocks they wear, reveal not just a really fascinating model of care and working rehabilitation program, but also a really true model of reform that ultimately can provide skills for meaningful employment, ultimately like teaching to care for these people that cannot care for themselves. As mentioned, we have two wonderful guests today. First, we're joined by Aileen Hongo, who is a geriatric social worker. She received her master's degree in Gerontology and Social Work from the University of Southern California. She came across the Gold Coats program in her studies, and she continues to research the plight of escalating aging prison populations and correctional facilities, unsuitable to accommodate the natural decline of physical mobility and cognitive processes of older adults. She also currently works as a life skills instructor in county jails. We're also joined today by Barry Hughes. Originally from LA, Barry served as a Gold Coat for 5 years and a hospice caregiver from 2004 until release from prison in 2012. He currently works as a health technician focusing on as a peer specialist in grief support for the Department of Mental Health in the Veterans Administration. A lot of really interesting topics we're going to be getting into today. And aside from all that, of course, both Aileen and Barry are authors of a book entitled Gold Coats, The Exceptional Standard of Care, a collaborative guide to caring for the cognitively impaired behind bars, available on Amazon and other book resources. Barry, Aileen, thank you so much for both taking time out of your schedule to come on the show today.
Thank you so much, Ira.
Yeah, thank you for inviting us.
It's really great having both of you. As mentioned, I'd like to start out by really handing the floor to both of you for a little bit each, just to talk about yourselves. If you could take a little time, as we typically do on the show, to introduce yourself, just talk everything about from where you grew up, a little bit of your background story, and a little bit of the events that led you, from both your perspectives, into learning first and foremost about the Gold Coats program.
Why don't we ladies first?
Thanks,
Absolutely.
Barry. Okay. My name is Aileen Hongo, and I'm a native of Los Angeles, born and raised here in LA. And I grew up basically with great-grandmother and grandmother in the household, right? And my mom was a single mom. So I was always around older people. And so I have a fondness for the elderly. As I grew up, went to school. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And to make a long story short, I went back to school late in life. I was probably in my late 40s, divorced. I had 2 little kids. I was like, what am I going to do? So I went back to school and I thought, I'm going to open my own adult daycare center. I love the elderly. So I went to school, got my master's in gerontology. And in the course of that, we had an assignment to go to either, it was a public facility, right? So either a hospital, a nursing home, or a prison. So I asked my professor, I'm like, really, a prison? And she said, yeah, if you could get in. So I emailed, 34 wardens, didn't get a reply. And finally, an ombudsman contacted me and said, hey, I'm going to the women's prison over there in Chino, if you want to go. And so I was like, oh my God, I do have to go because I have to do this paper. So in my mind, it was just getting the paper done. So I met her at the California Institution for Women in Chino, California. And I walked in and they were having a meeting with the Golden Girls. And I'm like, who are the Golden Girls? And they're women over 55 years of age. And there's a support group. And they kind of flocked to me. And, some of them had their glasses taped up. Some of them, they were showing me their dentures were broken. And they're like, can you help us? Can you help us? And I was like, oh my God, what the heck is going on here? And that changed the course of my life. I talked to my professor, I finished my paper, and she suggested, why don't you go and try to do some healthy aging workshops? And so I was like, wow. So, getting into one prison kind of opened the door for me to get into the other prisons. And so I started facilitating healthy aging workshops based on the difficult environment, right? It's not like they can go and, go to a dentist right away or, excuse me, get vitamins right away. So we talked about safety, right? A lot of times the elderly have to wait in long lines, even in the hot heat, or they may not be able to hear some warnings or some, instructions by the guards. So all these, adult, we call it daily activities of living, make it a little bit difficult in a harsh environment. Then I started to hear about a hospice and this Gold Coat program with dementia at the California Men's Colony. So I contacted the prison in San Luis Obispo. And my first day, I did a workshop with the Gold Coats. And there were a few hospice caregivers at the time also. And I was fascinated that I was thinking hospice caregivers in a prison. And, we really never think about people dying in prison. And many of them don't have a place to go. Many of them have families that have either passed away or really don't, aren't not able to care for them. And so they end up dying in prison. So there's a hospice in CMC, California Men's Colony. There's also one in Vacaville, California. And unfortunately, the women's prisons do not have a licensed, hospice. So there I met the Gold Coats, and I was just, fascinated. As I said, it was amazing, the care. I mean, these guys were changing diapers, they're cleaning up after, and it's hard enough to care for a family member, let alone a total stranger. Yep. It's just amazing. So then I received an email that, there's a lot about contacting some of the Gold Coats who were out. Mm-hmm. And I didn't even think about that. So a friend of mine, a colleague, actually knew a Gold Coat. And so I contacted him, which led me to meeting the first 3 gentlemen. One was with Barry. And we talked, and the skill levels that these guys were talking about, right? I mean, they knew about sundowners. I was like amazed. They knew so much about Alzheimer's and the compassion that they were showing. And so I told them, you guys need to write a book. You guys need to have a guidebook, mm-hmm. a legacy, because people inside many of the prisons really are struggling with the aging, right? They're the most costly population. And so there's another gentleman, Samuel Law, who was an original Gold Coat. I met with him, and I met with all of there was about 5-6 of us together. And he had this huge notebook. And so it had schedules, it had like primers of what to do. And so my fear was, okay, this is from the prison, so I didn't want to get into trouble with publishing something, right?
Right.
And he goes, oh no, these are mine. I said, what? He goes, yeah, we put this together ourselves. And so I checked with my contact at the prison, and she said, yeah, they actually put this program together themselves. They had some help, of course, but they had some training, I believe, with Alzheimer's. I think Barry would probably go into that a little bit more.
Okay.
But they were a peer-created program. And so it's still going on. I believe now, it's really hard with COVID. I haven't been able to visit, but there are other prisons who are using the idea of the Gold Coats. They may be helping, with wheelchairs, helping with meals. So it's a program. And ideally what, our vision, one of our visions was actually having a place where the guys like Barry and Steve and Terrence, who have the skills coming out, could care for those who don't have a place to go, right? Because compassionate release, right? So the men who are dying in prison, men and women who are dying in prison, will have a place to go, because they cannot parole if they don't have a place to go medically, right? Yeah. The correctional corrections is not going to put them in the street, so they're going to end up dying in prison. So if they have a place to go, and these guys can, really, they have the skills, they can run their own homes. And I believe it was Barry or one of you guys, I still remember, said, if they don't want to take care of them, we'll do it. We'll take care of our own. And that really struck me. So that's kind of where we are today. And Barry and these guys are like family to me.
Outstanding. Outstanding. Barry, please.
Yes, well, my name is Barry Hughes, for your audience. I'm a person that was born at Queen of Angels Hospital in Los Angeles. I was reared in predominantly all African-American community. Then my mother moved over to a beach community. She thought I would have greater opportunities. And so as a mom, she just only wants the best for her child. Because of that, that landed me in schools predominantly on the West Side. So I was able to see a variety of things as a child and have a variety of experiences. So there was a lot of things that go on in our society today that I was forced to learn during my adolescence. People can be very loving and protective, and within the same family, people can really be have a lot of lack of understanding and a lot of lack of knowledge. And I lived in a household that my mom always instilled in me an ability to seek information. So, playing chess, going to the library, excelling there was has a lot to do with, I guess, my foundation today, so that when I hear something that makes sense, that inspires, that is creative, when I notice that level of familiarity, then it causes me to act. So I can tell you that I'm trying to see how to skip this along. When I was in high school, I'll go there. When I was in high school, I joined the military soon after graduating. I did that because I wanted to see the world, because of how it was for me growing up as a child, having all these experiences playing tennis, surfing, basketball. I was very athletic. I ended up being one of the third fastest guys in California. Had I had the backing of, a family or someone that had the resources to connect me to people, because at Palisades High School, it's almost like you had to come from an affluent family to really be back, what I mean? So I wasn't a Jay Schrader, he's one of the guys that went to the Raiders. He used to throw the ball to me, and he threw it to me the same way he threw it to people in the NFL, high or low. And but all joking aside, these experiences I had just really assisted me while in the military, and well as when I got out. The thing is that I just didn't know, as a person who, as you know, this program development while being during incarceration. My experience in getting there was one that was very difficult and lonely. In that, whenever you do something wrong, in this case, someone lost their life by my leave. You know, I couldn't blame it on Ronald Reagan. I couldn't blame it on Oliver North. I couldn't blame it on the Constantinistas. You know, all this information that we have now. All I knew as a youngster is that there was a way to financially change my circumstances. And I didn't realize at that time in the moment that doing so was causing grandmothers to become mothers again. And so skipping to when I was incarcerated, that level of guilt, that level of clarity in knowing how much you can affect someone's life, the things you're doing, that it caused me to where when people like Aileen came into these institutions and things like that, sharing of their knowledge, trying to create vehicles in which a person can change their way of thinking, change their life, renew their minds. I hopped on that opportunity because that was something that was familiar to me, if that makes sense. So skipping to some things I know you're probably going to ask later. I went through a very arduous process in which it was through Hospice of San Luis Obispo that, because really in order for me to become a Gold Coat, I was a hospice caregiver.
Okay.
As you know, prison, or maybe your audience does not know, prison is just a small microcosm of our society. The same things go on there. Believe me, the same things go on there. You got people that get arrested again. You have people that have children. Yeah, you have fathers. You have mothers. You have people that are teachers. In my case, I met a woman who was a great influence in my life, and that she came into those institutions from the VA, and she was a forensic psychologist. She shared things like Marcus Aurelius, Norman Vincent Peale, Napoleon Hill. Plus, I was an avid reader myself. So people like James Allen, Thomas Paine, who wrote The Age of Reason. And then, of course, we have those things that we're rooted in, that our family gives us with, which are whether you're a Methodist or you're Muslim, that these things that they seem to they're connected, and they're connected. And I'd say the common thread is knowledge, and it was knowledge that really just saved my life. It was knowledge that created a vehicle for me to be an undercarriage, a mode of transportation for others who could not do it for themselves. And so it was with that becoming Gold Coat was very easy for me. I did not know that I would be able to sit bedside with any individual. I did not know that I would possess what it takes to exercise the things I've learned, everything from aromatherapy to coma therapy. I didn't realize how poetry can assuage and bring out the best in someone so that they have a greater, better experience as they go from this life to another. So in short, I will say that all these different experiences have prepared me so that when I was freed, I became, as you said, a health technician, but now I'm a counselor for what's called MICM, Mental Health Intensive Case Management, Veterans Administration, in which we work with schizoaffective, bipolar, men and women who have hallucinations, who've undergone such traumas to where, and then with some, in order to be able to kind of deal with that trauma, found themselves using narcotics or drugs. And So these things were also associated with speeding up or maybe helping these diagnoses to come about, if that makes sense. So I help them to be able to live with their diagnosis. I help them to be able to live with their fears, with their indecisions, with their doubts, so that as I share my experience, as I be an example for them, we have a mission statement that's called I Care. And it means really, the I stands for integrity. And they know my integrity by the C, which is my commitment to them. And they're able to see my commitment by the way I advocate for them. And through those things, we gain the R, which is the respect. And in the end, this is how we derive at excellence. And this is, I carry that with me. That's why I share that with you now, because it's been these experiences, this level of knowledge, this connection that has really assisted me in being a person that truly, I believe when I'm with someone who's transitioning from this life to the next, when I'm with someone who has a diagnosis that needs some support in figuring out that will appreciate a respectful prompting or redirecting or mirroring or reflecting something they've said, so they know I've listened to hear and not to respond. When I use these tools, it creates a better experience for not only myself, but for the person I'm trying to help.
Absolutely. That's fascinating. I really appreciate you sharing all of that. Really amazing that, how far you've come and the experiences you've had to date. Building on that a little bit, I'm shifting back to Aileen for a moment now, because, Aileen, Barry just took us on this fascinating journey. And obviously, I think about, read about the gold coats and I think about dementia, but obviously Barry just took us through everything from dementia to terminal illness to obviously end of life care, which really shows the sort of the broad perspective here. And then he brought in the other angle, of course, is that, this is everything he learned within this, originally in the microcosm of the correctional facility. Can you, Aileen, as a gerontologist, talk to us a little bit about, based on your experiences and everything that you've seen out of the correctional system, what are some of the unique things that you did see in the correctional system, whether it came to early onset dementia, some of these other chronic degenerative diseases, death and dying, that are unique to the incarceration system?
I think, Barry had a good point. It is a microcosm in a sense, but also here outside, we tend to, we think we're connected, but there's a different connection inside. When somebody is dying, or let's move back a little, maybe early onset Alzheimer's, right? Okay. A little bit confused, going someplace. And some of the stories these gold coats have told me, like, if somebody is confused and they get something from the commissary, they get a box from the commissary, they take it to their room, and someone else will come and take that box, maybe steal that box. Or gold coat will go in there and say, excuse me, right? That is not your box. And they will protect the sense of compassion of protecting. And I don't think we see that out here for a total stranger. Yeah. Whereas they are very special in the sense that they will risk a reputation, so to speak, right, of being considered, oh, you're helping them, they will stand up to, adversaries, where out here we might say, that's none of my business, that's, so I think that level of compassion, level of caring in a correctional setting is higher in that sense, which is weird, right? It's kind of an oxymoron. That, or somebody has soiled themselves, right? What would happen to somebody who soiled themselves out here, right? People would ridicule, leave them, maybe we'll have one or two that might help, but, and I'm talking specifically with the gold coats, will not think twice about helping somebody clean up or helping somebody, maybe not in the other part of the prison. I'm just talking about this specific program, that they are strong enough, have the, I don't call it, integrity, respect, and really help the patients and the clients have dignity. And I don't think we have that much outside. I think that's a huge difference.
May I interject?
Sure, please.
I would like to say to your audience that we know each other by our deeds and conduct. And that's no matter where you go. It doesn't change. When incarcerated, there are people there that are connected because of where they grew up, because of maybe how their socialization, what group they are acquainted with, protected by. And so when those different factions see you helping someone that they know, assisting someone that you know, you begin to gain a reputation. And so those people that are involved in the politics of these different institutions, whether they be staff or inmate, they are quick to recognize who is who, just like we do at work. We know who puts in the extra time, we know who is there sincerely, and we know who's there for a paycheck. And it's our deeds and conduct that was our breastplate of righteousness, if that makes any sense as a pastor, right? That people knew that we were there sincerely giving of our time because we believed in the power of what we were doing. And we saw how that really added some calm to the overall environment, where people could look and see, have a moment of clarity through an experience and know that there's still a reason to go on. That makes sense. To be a better man or woman.
Absolutely. Barry, taking your experience, and obviously, Aileen, you tag team in here any way you want, and please take your time with this, because I spent some time going through the book, and I spent a lot of time on the section ADL, Activities of Daily Living, which sort of highlights the training, really extensive training on these basic self-care activities, everything from eating to, Barry, as you were saying, bathing, toileting, and so forth. I'm a father. I've had bathing and toileting experiences with my young children. Never had to be involved with it with adults, and obviously never with strangers. Talk a little bit about your experiences. Obviously this was new for you, and not just your experiences, but also because you're training others. What this is all like, because this is really, once again, something that none of us, for the most part, we have dementia in our families and so forth, not always have this sort of this continuum that we need to learn like you did. Please talk for a while about this, if you would. And Aileen, jump in as well.
Well, you have to understand that this is, instead of being this is an environment that's really an incarcerated environment, a jailed environment, right? Where there's bars and things like that. But because of the coat that we wore, because of what the arduous process that it took to go through it. In other words, I must tell you that we had to be evaluated by social workers, by psychologists and psychiatrists. These are the people that were like the interviewers.
Yep.
And the reason why is because they wanted to be sure to protect the integrity of the process, because you're dealing with a very vulnerable population. And so I just want your audience just to know that they just didn't just randomly pick people for this program.
Sure.
They had to make sure that they had someone with the right temperament. They had to make sure that there was someone that was in it because they understood the various different circumstances that they might be involved in, as opposed to using it as a stepping stool for maybe getting out of prison. Right. And so, because those are different priorities, right? Sure. But to your question exactly, while in that environment, first thing you must learn, just like in a hospital, if someone's falling, you can't protect someone from falling. When they're falling, you have to let them fall. Otherwise, you can get hurt yourself, right? So while in that process, you can have people, because of their diagnosis, they may spit on you, they may call you a name, they may do things to agitate you. because of something a hallucination that they're having, something because there's a breakdown in their medication, something wasn't delivered on time, or we're finding out that they were just skipped over or missed. And this is why they've having a decline in their ability to socialize with others. Well, when one's going through those experiences, you can't act out, right? You have to take it. So I've dealt with incontinence. I've dealt with people who've, and I'm not saying this is an everyday thing. I'm just telling you just factual things. There are experiences that I've gone through where people have thrown feces against the wall, and those things have to be cleaned up, right? Somebody has to clean them up, and we cleaned that up. We also, but every experience wasn't like that. Some experiences were because of our knowledge in hospice and in the medical field, the training, stuff like that. When we saw a reoccurring urination, we noticed, hey, maybe there's something going on. Maybe this person is diabetic and doesn't know, right? So we find ways to escort them to talk about this during our morning huddles, to get because we have briefings before we even start our day. And please excuse me if I seem like I'm jumping around, but as I'm talking, I'm reminded of all the things. See, I could talk for an hour on just one specific subject, and I know we have a little amount of time to hit it all. And I'm one of those people, just so your audience knows, I always try to hit home runs.
That's fine.
Sports analogy, but I know that just getting someone to first and second base, that's good too. So I'll try to remind myself of that as I'm speaking. But in this environment, we see a lot of things, and we have to, in real time, find ways to, like if I'm a person that's responsible for showering at that time, monitor showering, observing behavior, being able to keep things moving, because we might have 100 people that need to be bathed, right? So we have a system, as you've seen in the book, in which we have people positioned in various different places where we can not only observe them, but we can take the time with those who are like suffering for dementia. Like, for example, my greatest number on a caseload would be 11. Out of the 11 people, maybe 3 or 4 of them would have certain levels of dementia or Alzheimer's. And just so your audience understands dementia, if you look at it like an umbrella, and then under that, you would have Alzheimer's, drug-induced, right? So all these different things that support why a person has that memory loss in the first place. And I must say that it was oftentimes easier for those that didn't have knowledge, that had to observe, whether they're a correctional officer or just another person doing time, when they knew that, or come to learn that maybe this is why a person was even incarcerated in the first place, that someone might have missed that, oh, this person has an issue. They think something violent is getting ready to happen to them, and they're responding in the manner they do. So they saw something, it wasn't there, it wasn't true, but they believed it, And so it was a lot easier to lower your wing, if you will, to assist people in this type of situation.
Excellent.
I recall a story. I don't think, Barry, if you remember, you told me, and it still stuck in my head. There was sometimes the Gold Coast would escort them to breakfast, right? The men with Alzheimer's, dementia. And one gentleman just wanted to go to the turnstile. They had a turnstile to go in for breakfast. And I remember Barry said, this gentleman just wanted to just go there. And so he stood up, he took him to the turnstile, and he was waiting for his mother. He wanted to see his mother. But just the 1 minute or 30 seconds it took to go to the turnstile, and Barry had told him, see, your mom's not coming today, she'll be coming tomorrow. So we're gonna have breakfast, and then we're gonna shower, so you'll be nice and clean. And he's like, okay. So just putting him in that mindset that, oh, okay, right? He may not realize that, but just for that moment, a little compassion, and he's a little bit calmer, right? Waiting for his mom. She'll be coming tomorrow. And then Barry was able to take him to the shower, and the rest of the day he was calm. So it's amazing, how the empathy that they really show to their clients.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. And later on in the book, there are several sections on sort of greatest moments and most challenging moments. And there's a bunch of really touching stories in here. Obviously, it doesn't say which Gold Coat's responsible for each, but everything from thank you for being here with me while I die. Thank you for being someone that will still touch me, and so forth. Barry, talk just a little bit, if you would, tell us a couple stories. It could be ones that were your greatest moments, ones which were your scariest, your most challenging. But please share some of those with us.
Well, because of what you said, I'm prompted to say that there was a gentleman that we called Woody, I'll just say, and he was someone that I was introduced to by one of the Gold Coats who's recently passed, named Samuel Law. And because they were inseparable. He was an elderly white man, Sam, African-American. They come from different walks in life, but they shared the same soul. And one day, Sam could not, and this is when I was newly hired, if you will, as a Gold Coat, brought on to be a part of this team. But Sam knew, and he says, "Hey, man, I have to go to see my lawyer right now. This individual is scheduled to." He had to go, I think it was something to do medically. I had to take him to the medical department. It's been so long, I don't really remember that aspect of it, but I'm pretty sure that's pretty accurate. And so Sam was looking at me very intently, like, "Barry, listen, I've talked to him. I've talked to him about who you are, and how special you are and how he can trust you. And would you please escort him, to the medical facility?" And I could see them both looking at me. They had the same look. And Mr. Woody, he I could see that doubt. It's like, oh my God, the person who I most trust is getting ready to go, and I don't know this guy, right? And anyway, we had a good experience. So I won't delve there. What I will say is that unfortunately, Mr. Woody had to be placed on hospice. He was somebody that was on a quad called Delta Quad. That quad was primarily with people that were DDPs, disabled veterans, EOPs, enhanced outpatient, part of the enhanced outpatient program. And he was one of those people that because he was on that quad, we already had a familiarity. So when it came time to picking a team, a hospice team that would visit him and, on a timely basis around the clock until that final moment, I was a part of that. And so just jumping right to the experience, he was in what's the equivalent of ICU in prison. And so they have him in this room where he can be monitored, and there's a lot of glass windows so he can be seen, so that if someone walking by and they just see something or notice something aloof, they can go right there and immediately he can get immediate attention. Well, I was sitting with him, and unknown to me, he had a visitor that day. It was his wife. And I guess, what had happened is she had been there to come visit. I didn't know he was having a visit. So she was observing. At that moment, I just so happened to be just dapping his brow, reading his Bible to him. I placed all type of pictures on tape around him of things he could see, of familiarity, experiences he shared with his children and those whom he loved and he was close with. And times when he danced with his wife, because apparently they used to go to it looked like a country setting, and they had cowboy hats and boots and everything like that. And they would dance, and I guess they were very good. Some they did as a couple. And she just observed the care that he was getting. And so the officer came in and said, "Hey, he has a visit. You have to leave." And I was like, so apologetic. I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know." I mean, he goes, "Oh, no problem." I said, "She's been here for about half hour. She just waited because of the care that you've seen." And she came in and she said some words to me that were so uplifting, that were so inspiring, that were so appreciative to where it caused me to cry. And I looked away in shame because I thought, in my mind, I was thinking about all the things I was there for, all the things I've done. I knew all the things I accomplished, and I knew that I had a lot to be proud of. But, you know, I'm still a human being.
Sure.
And I never forget, she put her hand under my chin and she lifted my head up. And she said some very amazing, positive things, again, because of what she observed. And that experience is heartfelt to this day, because that's when I really knew for sure that I had arrived, and that I had arrived truly, you know, and that experience has always guided me to wanting to be a better man.
Beautiful, beautiful. And you know, you just thinking about that, you know, you brought in not just the your experience in that particular case as the caregiver of this individual, but also, as mentioned, the wife. And again, Aileen, you can jump in here. You can tag team on this one. When it comes to some of these really complex cases, especially when we're talking about things like dementia, obviously, again, outside the correctional system, there's a very big, obviously, personal component, but then the family has a major part of the care, of obviously the grief and the stress and everything that comes with it. Talk a little bit about the family, a little more about the families, and ultimately, you know, you talk a little bit about this in the book as well. Family perspective on how they look at this in terms of loved one, not just incarcerated, but also suffering from cancer, dementia, what have you, terminal case. Talk a little bit more about the family experience, because I think that's, you were just talking there, Barry, an extremely important piece of this that we need to emphasize.
Well, before Aileen deals with that, let me set it up by saying this.
Sure.
Oftentimes in these experiences, people still see the matriarch or the patriarch or the family in the same light. So in other words, if you were the person that was the breadwinner, you were the person people turned to for trust, for safety, for guidance, or for finance, people still saw their loved one in that same capacity, even though you could tell them, hey, listen, this is what dementia is. This is how, you know, how plaque grows on the brain. This is, you can give analogies using a short and a fan. And, you know, you could do all these things to educate, but you have to educate through all those years of how they've seen and believe an individual to be. And it's amazing the things that the human being holds on to. That first impression that a daughter has with her father or with her mother, or a son has with her father or mother and other relatives, right? And so I have to start there, because that's a huge dynamic in that when people come to visit, you can tell by the questions that they have before the compassion, they're still wrestling with, why isn't this person responding the way they've always responded, even though you've just told them. So I have to start there, because, and then this person's older, so they don't hear this the same way they did, right? They don't see the same way they did, right? That's why we use the word cognitive. They just don't, they don't feel. So people will be talking to someone and they're not looking in the eye, they're not sitting in front of them, they're not asking permission. And so sometimes a lot gets lost. And it can sometimes lead to some type of disconnection. And as a goal coach, you are there to remind people of their power, right? To remind them that they can change the experience for the better, right? And and so you end up being almost like an instructor or a teacher, just like things were instructed and taught to you, so that that information becomes more powerful than their doubt, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
I think, you know, it's so difficult with the aging process. At one of the reentry homes, I was told there was a gentleman, elderly gentleman, who got out probably in his late 70s, early 80s. And the family said, yes, we want to take care of him. He was not quite hospice, but would be getting there soon. And so he had to do 6 months at the reentry home. That's just the policy. And so the daughter came to pick him up, brought him home. And 2 weeks later, she brought him back. She said, I can't care for him, right? Crying, but she said, I can't, I have to work. He doesn't know me. Mm. And that was just so heartbreaking, because the intention is there, right, to help. I want to reconnect, but so much time had gone by. And, you know, on a different note, you know, I'm teaching reentry parenting to men and women who have been disconnected with their kids, and to reunite them. And I bring this up because, Barry, that disconnect, right? I'm not the same person that I was, right, going in. I lived in a different world, right? They lived in different worlds, and they're trying to reconnect. So it's really difficult, I think, for the family, both sides, right? Mentally, you know, socially, how is this going to work? And I think that's a huge issue. I already really brought up a good point about transitioning, right? Yep. The family also has to learn to accept, okay, you know, dad is coming home, mom is coming home, maybe with dementia, you know, what are we going to do, right? Mm-hmm. How are we going to care? Let alone, right, those who have already been incarcerated become very close to people like the Gold Coats, because they've cared for them, they're comfortable. And like Barry said, right, Sam was so close to Woody, right? Yep. Like family. So they become family. I believe, right, Barry, that you do become family to many of them.
Yes. In that case, when I was explaining about Woody, you know, we are preparing them from sun up to sundown. And we're doing it in a secure setting where there's even compassion amongst staff, because they're able to see, wow, this person is really there. Mm-hmm. Where like I had access that other inmates didn't have. So sometimes my door would be open, sometimes because there might be a situational problem that happens at 12 o'clock at night. And the guard is like, man, I cannot deal with this. I don't know what to do. And then they think about, oh, I seen him with this guy. You know, they might not even know my name, but they know I've seen him with this guy when I was working the tower, and a problem happened. And I seen that he dealt with that pretty good. So they go get you. And oftentimes, I mean, it's a better experience. And
you could calm him down,
probably calm down and under control and back in their bed. And then we're able to reassess in the morning, right? Mm-hmm. Or later on that morning. And I mean, this is just another example of just like the daily operations that go on. I mean, life doesn't ask permission, right? These things happen around the clock all the time, just like other calamities throughout the world. And we have to find ways to dig in and see our true mettle, right? Our resilience, our staying power, and see it through.
Absolutely. You know, Barry, you're doing great stuff now at the VA. Talk a little bit, a little bit more about what you're up to now. But at the same time, does the men's colony at the St. Louis Middle School call you now and then to come in and train other? How are you still involved at this point? Are you called in as the expert on certain topics to lecture on still? Well, talk a little about still the connection, obviously, what you're doing now, but also connections back to the past.
I must be honest. A lot of that has come about through Aileen, and also our connections, because we've had 2 symposiums since I've been out. And the first at USC, they were both there, but the first at USC was something that we were able to get recreational therapists, psychiatrists, and from California Men's Facility to come down to be a part of, as well as other educators in the social worker field. who have asked people like myself to come speak in their classes, right, and things like that. So all these different things like this have, and then knowledge that I've always been a person who seek knowledge. So I was a person that, like, while I was incarcerated, I was just an advocate of NPR, Amy Goodman, oh my goodness, people that she would have on there, that she would feature, and it would just broaden my perspective. And then there was people coming in who were educating and teaching and supporting all these different programs. And so when I derived to where I'm at now, and I could see that how all these tools, if you will, and experiences equipped me for what I'm doing now, working for severely mentally ill. Right now, to answer your question, what I'm doing is I'm associated with 2 doctors, 3 educators from who have serious titles from UCLA, and we're creating a humanistic pocket tool. We created a vignette in which that we're trying to assist providers in being more humanistic when they're dealing with their clients, especially when they have those that can be very disruptive because they come around, along. And like I said before, it could be a situation where someone just called in and they're trying to reach their provider, but the person that they're talking to doesn't really understand how this pain is causing these other multitudes of things, and how this pain is being further driven by a factor dealing with the fact that they just had a bad conversation with their daughter. You understand? So it's like they really wish they'd done something better here, but because they're concentrated on their pain, they didn't give their best self in that experience. So they're holding on to that guilt, and then here's somebody that they're talking to on the phone because they're trying to deal with the pain, and someone's denying them opioids, right? Because this person has a history of addiction, right? These are real things, and how to work your way through these problems and listen to hear, right? So we've created this tool. We're trying to get it in the form of an app so that someone will be able to use it anytime. We're also trying to use it as a training tool for those in our fields, our specific fields. So that's what I'm involved in now.
Awesome. And Aileen, you mentioned some of the work you were doing. I mentioned in the bio, you still work with some of the different county jails and in terms of life skill instructors and so forth. Talk a little bit about what else you got going on, and then also, obviously, I mentioned at the beginning sort of the numbers of correctional facilities in the United States. What's the current state? And of course, Barry, chime in here as well. Of getting this program national. Are there other pockets of this amazing type of program that you see gestating in the United States currently? And if not, how can we get the word out there? But it's just a great story.
I think it's just a slow moving wheel, right? Okay. But compared to maybe a decade ago or a couple of decades ago, at least there's a little bit of a movement toward reform and a little bit of movement toward getting the elderly out. Yep. I am currently working with the reentry population, but I'm also, I have my foot in the door with the elderly. So I'm working with the local Alzheimer's Association, and we're trying to do a statewide Alzheimer's awareness. Okay. And we're going to target maybe 3 prisons in California. Okay. To do a walk, right? They can walk in the yard at the same time the National Alzheimer's is doing their walk in October. So it'd be an awareness kind of an awareness campaign about Alzheimer's inside, right? So early onset Alzheimer's. Well, let's get this person treatment, or, get him in the right facility versus putting him in the SHU, right? Maybe he had an outburst, or maybe he got lost. He starts wandering. Instead of punishing him, let's get him a diagnosis, right? So that type of awareness we just started the conversations with the Alzheimer's Association, and actually Barry with the Central Cal Alzheimer's Association, they're very interested because they were instrumental in helping the original Gold Codes.
Okay.
So we're going to try to get statewide in terms of awareness, right? Look for the signs. These are the signs. This is not insubordination. This could be early, onset dementia. But the walk itself, we're aiming for October when the National has their walk. Hey, we have 3 huge yards in California that are also going to be walking for Alzheimer's. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Excellent. Really excellent stuff. And I just thinking, we touch on the topic of Alzheimer's dementia a lot on the show, and it is such a, it's constantly referred to as the tsunami that's coming, and we need to have all the tools available. And it really seems that what you've put together here, what you've learned over the last couple of decades with this program is just, it really adds an important component to sort of increasing our understanding of different ways to address these dreaded conditions. And it's fascinating. It has been fascinating listening to both of you tell the stories, really rooting you on for both of what you're involved in now, and to continue raising awareness and moving these programs forward. For everybody that is going to be listening to this episode across our podcast or watching on the YouTube channel, you've been listening to Aileen Hongo and Barry Hughes, both authors of the book The Gold Coats, An Exceptional Standard of Care, a collaborative guide to caring for the cognitively impaired behind bars, available on Amazon and a variety of other sources. Aileen, Barry, I want to thank you both for taking the time out of your schedule on the weekend to talk to us for a little while about what you've been involved in. Obviously, thank you for everything you've been doing there. And as we like to say on this show, thanks for helping to create a better tomorrow through what you've done and what you've been creating. It's really a fascinating story. And thank you both for your time.
Thanks, Ira.
Thank you as well, sir.